Hey guys, it's Strung Out BJD here with another doll review. Today we're going to be looking over Iplehouse's YID Justin. I would like to note that in the case of my Justin, his nose has been slightly modified to better suit what I wanted. I'll mention what was changed when we get to looking at his head sculpt later, but I figured I'd give you guys a heads up. Before we begin, please be aware that this video will contain doll nudity. Most BJDs, unlike playline dolls like Barbie, are usually sculpted with nipples and genitalia. These features are not usually particularly graphic, but if nudity is something that bothers you, then I would advise you should stop watching now. First, we'll take a look at the official measurements for the doll as listed by Iplehouse. I've also included information related to my specific doll, such as what resin color I got him in, who did his face up, and what eye size I use in him. Now we'll move on to the head. The Justin head uses a simple head cap system. On the back of the cap, you'll find the company's logo embedded into the resin. The head cap is simply attached to the head via magnets, which, to be honest, don't keep the cap on the head as securely as I would like. If you plan to just put your doll on a shelf and never touch it again, it's not a big deal. But if you plan to regularly handle your doll, you're going to find it a bit annoying how easy these things fly off. I personally just use the putty that I keep my doll eyes in to make the cap stick more securely to the head. Anyway, for the inside of the doll head, Iplehouse goes with the standard for most BJDs. The eyes are kept in with putty, and an S-hook keeps the head secured to the body. Moving on to mobility, the Justin head has so-so ability in this area. He can look up well enough, but down, not so much. His head tilts side to side alright, but his head actually takes more force than usual to move side to side. I think it might be a mixture of how thick his neck is, along with how tightly strung this particular doll is. Here's a closer look at the Justin sculpt. As mentioned before, my boy has been given a slight mod. I had his original nose bridge sanded down some so he had a more flat, ski slope-esque nose. Originally he had a slight bump along his nose. Unfortunately, I don't have any pictures of my own to show how it looked before, and Iplehouse's company photos don't show it off very well either. Moving on, you can see that he holds his arm up on his own very well. For his elbow, he has a floating peanut piece, and he is considered double jointed. As you can see though, it takes some manhandling to actually utilize the joint. The lower half of the peanut also really enjoys slipping fully back into its socket, so be prepared to get super frustrated when posing this doll when he is fully clothed. I'd also like to take a minute to show off some of the detailing on this body's sculpting. Yes, this dude has sculpted on veins. It's one of my favorite features of this body just from the sheer artistry. As for the hands, they have a pretty decent range of forward and backward motion, and can also wiggle around nicely within the socket. And here's a better look at the detailing put into the hands. Iplehouse hands are definitely my favorite doll hands to see realistically blushed, thanks to the beautifully detailed sculpting put into them. Another thing to note regarding Iplehouse dolls in general is that they have this nifty little C-shaped piece that you slip over the hand's S-hook to hide it and give the wrist a bit more of a seamless look. It's a cool addition, but it can be a bit of a pain to deal with sometimes since the C-piece doesn't always like to sit nicely in the wrist. They can also be ridiculously easy to lose if they fall out when you're not paying attention. The torso is able to be moved side to side decently well, but since this guy is so big, it definitely takes some muscle to move his chest piece around. You'll also notice that there is definitely some noticeable gaping. He can bend backwards quite a lot, but again, there's a big gap, and I can't really say he feels super stable in that position. It'll take quite a bit of finagling and fighting against his sheer weight and gravity to properly pose him with his back bent this way. As for forwards, he has built-in lips sculpted into his torso to help lock him into slouched positions. You want to be careful about fully bending him forward though. As you can see, I've managed to accidentally snap off some bits of resin from the upper portion. His slouched positioning doesn't look terribly dramatic when he's sitting. It's more useful for more dynamic poses when he's standing. Before we move on, I'd like to go over the leg choices available to purchase with YID boys. Iplehouse offers two types of legs to have your doll come with. There is the general type, which makes the upper thigh all one piece, and then there's the mobility type, which splits the upper thigh into two pieces. If you're interested in handling and posing your doll, I'd say you should spend the extra money on the mobility legs. Now, unfortunately, I cannot find company photos of the YID boy mobility thighs in action, and my Justin has just the general type leg, so I had to go with a picture I took of my JID boy's legs. But all the mobility type legs should be about the same throughout all of the Iplehouse doll lines. Pulling apart the thigh from the hip socket, you can see he has a locking mechanism built into this area. This feature helps him stay upright and sometimes helps him keep his leg in specific lifted positions. It doesn't always work, it really depends on how well your doll is strung, but when it does work, it can be very handy. Unfortunately, because of this mechanism and how these dolls in particular are strung, his thigh cannot swivel or otherwise move around within the socket at all. If you want his leg to move around, you'll either need to opt for the mobility joint type or have the doll modified, and even in that case, that'll only fix the swiveling leg issue. All that said though, he's a pretty solid sitter. And down to the knees, you can see after an embarrassing amount of time that he has a floating peanut knee joint. Like his elbow, it takes a good bit of muscle and manhandling to fully utilize. Last we have the feet, which are, well, they look nice, but you can't really get much out of them as far as posing goes. Their movement is incredibly limited, mostly thanks to the fact that they don't use a ball shape for the ankle like most BGDs have. On the plus side, it does make this body pretty ridiculously stable when standing. Now here's one last look at the body in full. If you couldn't tell, Iplehouse is all about that aesthetic. They may be bricks to pose, but dang, these doll bodies are so dang beautiful. I'd say my absolutely favorite thing about this doll is his legs. Those are the best looking legs I've ever seen on a male doll. Now, let's be real here. If you've been involved in the hobby for even just a few months, you have likely heard that Iplehouse dolls are notoriously bad at posing. And well, they are definitely beasts to handle, and there are a lot of other dolls out there that easily outshine Ipple dolls in the posing department. That said, with a little ingenuity, patience, and plenty of energy to wrestle with the doll, you can manage to get some decent looking poses out of this particular body. Just be prepared to sweat a little bit in the process. But for real, nobody has ever bought an Iplehouse doll for its posing prowess. Oh no, it's all about the aesthetics, and hoo boy, does the YID boy look amazing. If you're into a body that has this sort of idealized model muscle build and not so much muscle that's been passed down the Armstrong family for generations type of build, the YID boy is gonna be great for you. However, the YID boys in particular have one big drawback: clothes. Pants in particular. These boys are unfortunately not as popular as the male dolls in Iplehouse's other doll lines, meaning it's going to be difficult to find clothes made specifically for this body. Ipple has a few things, but their options are pretty limited and also on the spendy side. If you're someone that doesn't know how to take in a shirt or hem pant legs, you're going to have a difficult time getting clothes for this dude. He can easily fit into pants made for 70cm tall dolls, but the pant legs are way too long, and depending on the type of pants or how they're made, that doll wing does not help matters. For shirts, I've been able to put my guy in 70cm doll tops or very baggy standard SD boy shirts. Depending on the style and the cut of a top, you can get away with not altering them, but you're definitely going to want to have at least a basic understanding of sewing if you intend to own a YID boy. Shoes are, thankfully, far easier to shop for since he can generally fit in the more standard SD boy and larger shoes. Just be sure to keep an eye on measurements before making purchases. And that's all for my review. If you have any questions or feedback, feel free to leave a comment down below. Joker and I will see you in the next video. They have this nifty little C-shaped piece that and my voice sounds like ass.